Today we're gonna do a little bit of planning, a lot of cutting, and there's gonna be a lot of shop noises. So if you're into those things, you came to the right place. I'm gonna get started on cutting the back end off of this car. Let's get after it. So first what I wanna do when laying this out is come up with two lines. I wanna make a 90-degree angle here. So I wanna have a straight line this way and then a straight line down. And that'll give me a good reference for my radius that I want to cut in here and make it look smooth. I want to be able to box all this off so no smoke's getting inside the cabin, and I want to have a good clean cut that just looks nice when the panels are off. So I'm going to start by going 2 1/4 down from this line here, and then I'm going to measure from the door jamb this way and make it all even both sides. So I'll have a perfect 90-degree here, and then I'll be able to figure out what radius I like. Just visually, I'm just gonna look at it. So from this paint line here, I found that 2 1/4 works. It's pretty much exactly where I want it. So I'll just make a couple marks with my little Sharpie, and then I'll tape it all off as a final result. For this kind of stuff, I like to use one of these old school metal rulers. It's a little bit flexible, cork on one side. They're pretty nice because it'll contour to the chassis. So I can use that and everything will be nicely bent around. So it's pretty nice to have. You can get them at Staples, you can get them anywhere. So pick yourself up one of these guys. They're useful. And you can use this to draw a radius if you need to. Just pin yourself a point. It's kind of nice. All right, so I've made a couple lines here at 2 1/4. I'm gonna tape that straight across. And then next for me is to measure from the door jamb over, which from the other side, I've kind of determined that 21 inches was about what I wanted. My next measurement is coming off the door jamb. Anytime I do something like this, where I'm laying out something to cut off the chassis that I want to be even on both sides, I try and find something on the chassis as a pretty good focal point. For me, it's this line right here where this is seamed together in the door jamb. So I'm gonna measure from there, and from both sides of the car, it should be pretty dang even. So find a decent point. Let's say 21 1/4 looks pretty nice. So 21 1/4 from that door jamb should be even on the same, should be even on the other side. So I have a good point to go up. To get this level, usually I would use a plumb bob kind of above here to draw the line straight down, but it's not that exact. It's gonna be covered up. So I'm just gonna try and get after it with a ruler. So I'm gonna take a ruler up to the next line. All right, so I've made my marks, and now I'm just gonna tape, get a nice fine tape line where I wanna cut. Try to make it as even as possible. Like I said, this isn't exact, but it's pretty dang close. I should be within 1/8 of an inch of everything, which from the naked eye will be hard to catch. So there's one line, and now all I gotta do is make another 90 here, and I can figure out where I wanna go with the radius. All right. Trying to be as even as I can with my couple small marks down there. Draw a line to 90. We'll check it with the square, see how close we are. Yeah, I am not mad at that. So now I'll tape that line off. Tape that line off, and it should give me a pretty good idea of where I need to be. It's getting windy outside. So you can see I have a pretty nice 90-degree line, and where I want to radius this, I'll just kind of make up. I don't want it to be a big sharp 90-degree cut, so I'm going to determine where I want that curve to be, where I want the arch to fit, and what it looks like nicely under there. So I can easily make a piece to seal this off. I don't want to make this super difficult on myself, so a little bit of planning, see what I have around the shop to help make this radius. So normally when I lay something out like this, I typically would have the wheels and stuff on the car, but the rear end subframe is all out of it. It makes it nice because it's pretty even on both sides. Depending on your ride height and whatever, it can get adjusted a little bit funky, but it's nice to have a string and be able to kind of draw that stuff out. Other than that, I usually kind of just, kind of make a couple marks, measurements of where I think that the arch should be and judge from the inside. I looked around the shop to find something that maybe would work for radius. This is what I came up with. Trash can lid. So we'll see how that looks. I'll draw a little line and we'll judge if it works or not. So I'll pick a pretty decent point, try and stay fairly even on both sides. But as I looked on the inside here, it fits the radius on the inside fairly well. So knowing that I want to keep that kind of contour, I'm going to just make my judgment call of where this should be. And then we'll make a measurement and see if it looks cool on the other side as well. So somewhere about here. Not really mad at that, looks pretty good. So let's tape it out and see what it looks like. All right, let's see if I can make a nice tape line. Sometimes making a nice tape line can be a little bit difficult. Got to curve it a little bit. The top edge will roll over. If you want to, you can make a relief cut. Should help. But I think I can do this. It's not that aggressive. So that should give me a pretty good idea of where to cut, and I'll just edge up on it. So cut a little bit further out underneath the line, and then as I smooth it out, I'll edge up to it and make it look really nice. But that's a pretty simple and basic layout, just to make sure that it's easy to memorize for the other side. So I can take an easy measurement off of the things that are already in place, say the window and the door jamb, and then in between, once I intersect these lines, then I know where to put my radius. So both sides will be exactly the same. So I always advise you stand back and take a look at it and see what it looks like from a little bit further away before you do anything. So don't cut. You can do this a couple times, see what looks nice. So I think this looks pretty good, as it will be cut up here as well. So now I just got to determine the length in which I want to cut this section, and then we'll go up to here. So not a very big deal. I just want to make sure everything looks good. So standing back looks nice, and it follows this contour pretty good. So it should be pretty easy for me to make another piece to fit in here and seal off the cabin from all the tire smoke. So next up is deciding where I want to cut off the back. So the rear quarter will be all the way out here. It's going to cover a majority of all this. So I do want a little bit of structure, as I want that to have some rigidity to it and to make it easy to line up, just to have something to base everything off of. And then I want a good spot for where I want to put the deck lid pins, which looks like this is a good spot here where I could bolt in the rear quarter and then have some space left over to put the deck lid pins. So what I'm going to do is measure off of the end of the car, as I found a pretty nice point right here. And this is kind of the adjustment bolt for your trunk where it would go up and down, but it's the same on both sides. So I'm gonna measure off that point. I took a guess, just marked here to see where that is. And we'll just measure off of that, which looks to be 16. Pretty much, we'll make that 16 inches on the nose. And then I can just do that to the other side as well. So I'll remember off that bolt that that's 16, and I'll just draw from here to there. We'll tape that up, and it should look nice. And this isn't gonna be exact. I'm not gonna measure this perfectly. Like, it might not be 90. I'm eyeballing this here, but like I said, it doesn't really matter too much. as this will be cut off. So make that the point in which I think should look good. I'm gonna tape it off so it pops and I have a better visual, but I think that's kind of where I want it. Gotta make sure I put the tape on the right side. This is a point where you can get kind of turned upside down, but I definitely want to cut this here. So I'm gonna put that on the outside. So I'll peel this back. So this will be my cut line here, and that should do everything from the outside. So once again, stand back, take a look at it. Now that I have a pretty good idea of what needs to be cut, actually, you know, well, here, I know. Typically, I would kind of cut this away as well so you can see exactly what's gonna happen. But the cut line is right here, up through here. So all of this on this side will be removed. Everything here is gonna stay as it is all nice. Some of this is dented in, some of this is messed up from other drift events or when it's been cut up, hitting cones, whatever it may be. So these are all very straight panels. That's what I want to keep. And I just will mirror this to the other side, and then I'll start looking at the inside of what I want to cut and how I want to get the whole back end off. All right, so I've mirrored both sides. I made the passenger side match, and I'm ready to start cutting. So I have the outline from what I want from the outside. Basically now all I'm doing is looking to the inside. I'm gonna start cutting away a little bit at a time. I'm gonna get a little bit aggressive with it as I'm gonna take off pretty much the whole back end, but I'm not gonna cut out the trunk space necessarily where it's gonna be as a final result. So I'm gonna cut a little bit away, and then I'll make an assessment from where I wanna go from there. I kind of picked a spot on the frame rail that I like, that I might end up cutting to the point where there's two spots where the frame rail hit. It's kind of a welded together section, a bolted together section. So I might pick that as a point of reference to start from my crash structure and everything else. So you may have seen before, I cut out the inside wheel well on the driver's side, and I started cutting out the passenger side, but my GoPro died. So the next thing I do is just cut the rest of that out so I can see where I'm going. Then from there, I have drawn a line inside the trunk that I put behind the wheel wells. So basically the very last point of the wheel well in the trunk is where I started a line, and I just drew it straight across. So I'll start cutting there, and then I'll edge forward to figure out more of what I want to cut. But I want to get all this stuff off so I can see a little better, and then kind of see where I want to have the frame rail cut for the crash structure and things like that. So I don't want to cut too much away, as it's kind of a pain in the ass to put everything back, but I'm going to start on the inside, cut stuff up, and then I'll work my way out, and once I get to the outside and cut the last pieces, the whole back end should fall off. So should be fairly simple, and yeah, so just start cutting. Try and do the best that I can. So I cut the line through the trunk just above the frame rails. I haven't cut through the frame rails yet, as I want it to be still pretty rigid. Probably be the last thing I cut is the frame rail. So now that I have the line cut inside and I know where it's going to lead up to, I'm going to go ahead and cut this outside part. Should be trimmed pretty nicely, as I don't want to do too much finish work on it. I want it to be just a nice cut. So I'll cut this out, and then I will move on to the frame rails, and everything should probably just fall off. It's pretty simple. I'm sure I'll miss some pieces, but let's go ahead and start cutting this. The back section's cut out for the most part, so now basically just cut the frame rails and see if it drops. I'm sure there's a couple things holding it up. Some spots are really hard to get to, and I plan on cleaning those up after I get all this stuff off. I'll have a little bit more access to it. So cut the frame rails, drop this back off, and then I can start cleaning things up and making it look a lot nicer. Let's see how this goes. All right, there's one side. It's pretty free now. Let's see what else is holding it up. Scary. Freedom. That's all freed up. I can get this out of the way, start cleaning up some of these edges, straighten out the frame rails, see exactly where I want to cut them, and then I can start edging back the trunk. And then I got a couple other plans with what I want to do with these support braces for the strut towers, things like that. So got a lot more freedom to work now. And there's definitely no going back. Now that this is all cut out, got a better visual on what I plan to do. So you can see that this is cut a bit higher than where the wheel arch is, but I will kind of lean that out. So this will all be covered up till about this point here. So I will build my own wheel well to keep smoke out of the cabin, also add a little bit of rigidity to it. But I'm going to probably cut this flush up here and make this a bit stronger as that goes into the shock tower. So I will probably plate this with something a bit stronger than just like the typical 16, 14 gauge, whatever I'm gonna use for that. After I have this stuff all boxed in and figured out, then I will clean everything up, make it look nice and tidy, and then make something for the side skirt to mount to as well. I want something that is easily removable and replaceable, as this is kind of one of those spots that gets a lot of contact when you're in tandem. So I want to keep that in mind. If it gets hit, I want to be able to replace it and it to be able to pop back out. So I may move this forward just a little bit. I'm going to have to wait until I get the side skirt and the rear quarter on to see exactly where that stuff is. But I'm pretty sure this is kind of the line I want to go to. Moving on to the rear structure here, I haven't cut out all of this trunk pan because I want to be able to creep up to it. So I'm going to cut along the frame rail, cut this seam out where the seam sealer is, and then I'll get a good look at where the frame rails are. I want to be able to cut that dead straight and have it pretty even, as I'll be making a whole bunch of rear crash structures in case I have a problem. I want to be able to replicate it. So I'll make myself a jig and get myself laid out, and I'll have multiple of each. In case I have a crash, I'm able to replace everything, and you know, it's just fiberglass back here. So any real damage should pop right back out as long as I put a new structure underneath it. Should be fine. You can fix most of the fiberglass. If not, worst comes to worst, you can just get another quarter. So not a big deal, no metal work. That's kind of the idea behind cutting all this. So I'm gonna creep up on this and get a little bit further, but I definitely wanna start making I definitely want to start making this a little bit nicer. I'm going to clean everything up here and figure out what needs to go away, what needs to stay, and how I can make it look nice and also take away any edges and make it super easy to work on. So the whole reason I'm doing this is to make everything easier to work on. So as I start to cut away and think about where I'm going to put things, I want to keep in mind that I want to make everything easy to work on, that I have access, and it just makes it simple at the track. The whole goal is to have more seat time, and I just need to make it easier to work on. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, I'm not happy that I cut up a perfectly good car, but I'm happy to move on. Well, I got to clean up the shop, and then I'm going to watch the Winter Classic. So I hope you guys have a great day. As always, thank you guys for watching, and see you next Thursday.